All right, so let me provide you some updates. Now, the Office of the Special Prosecutor says former President John Dramani Mahama did no wrong in his involvement in the Airbus deal. The office made this known at a press conference where it reviewed John Mahama as Government Official 1, the named elected government official in the deferred prosecution agreement by the UK Crown Court. There is more in the following report.
And fined the company for its employees facilitating bribes to government officials in some countries, including Ghana, in order to secure business deals. In the judgment of the court relating to Ghana, Airbus and the government of Ghana were said to have entered into 2 separate contracts for the purchase of 3 sets of aircraft. The judgment, however, did not reveal the identity of the persons involved. The deal was said to have been through an intermediary, identified as Intermediary 5, who was described as a brother of an elected government official, identified as Government Official 1. The judgment further revealed that Intermediary 5 was paid about 3.5 million euros to facilitate the purchase of one of the aircraft. The court further concluded that the monies were paid in a disguised manner to Intermediary 5. The president of Ghana, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, then referred the matter to the Office of the Special Prosecutor for further investigation into the Ghanaian case. The Office of the Special Prosecutor says its individual investigations established John Mahama as Government Official 1 and his biological brother, Samuel Adam Foster, also known as Samuel Adam Mahama, as Intermediary 5.
The OSP confirms the identity of the following individuals. Government Official 1, Individual 1. The individual described as Government Official 1 by the UK court and Individual 1 by the US court is John Dramani Mahama. He is a citizen of Ghana. He was the Vice President of Ghana from 7 January 2009 to 24 July 2012. He was the President of Ghana from 24 July 2012 to 7 January 2017.
Special Prosecutor Kise Jaben, at a press conference, however, revealed that no wrongdoing was found on the part of Mahama nor Samuel Adam Mahama.
It seems that Foster's Airbus intermediary role at the time his brother served as the Vice President of Ghana was a case of luckless coincidence that attracted the disapproval of the UK and US authorities. The OSP found no evidence that suggests that the involvement of Foster as an intermediary of Airbus and the direct communications and meetings between former President Mahama and officials of Airbus to close the deal between Airbus and the government of Ghana amounted to any corruption and corruption-related offense in respect of which the OSP has a mandate.
The investigations of the anti-graft body also noted that the monies paid to Samuel Adam Mahama were for agency services rendered to Airbus. The Office of the Special Prosecutor noted that there was no evidence of any monies paid to John Mahama or any government official as bribe.
The OSP found no evidence, circumstantial or direct, which suggests that Foster and his associates were actually paid bribes, and which bribes were to be transmitted to former President Mahama, and that the bribes were actually paid to former President Mahama. Indeed, to all intents and purposes, and objectively viewed, an agency relationship existed between Airbus and Foster and his associates.
The anti-graft body, however, noted that John Mahama and Samuel Adam Mahama ought to have known that their involvement would raise eyebrows. The office then expressed disapproval of the involvement of government officials in such transactions as it may raise suspicions of abuse of office.
And the government of Ghana, that the familiar relationship between former President Mahama and Foster and the direct participation by former President Mahama in the communications and meetings with Airbus officials were bound to raise reasonable suspicions of improper conduct and dealings, notwithstanding any claims to good faith conduct and above-board dealings, especially in light of the fact that during the first Airbus campaign, former President Mahama was the chairman of the Armed Forces Council by reason of his position as the vice president, and therefore a very key decision maker.
All right, so you're welcome back to the big issue just gone by. You saw a brief or a summary of what the Office of the Special Prosecutor or the Special Prosecutor himself had to say about the Airbus scandal investigations. Of course, we know that he began the investigations, or that office, of course, he was not the person in the office at the time. It was Martin Amidou. That office had a referral from the president through his secretary to them to look into the matters, because Ghana's name and certain officials' identity of a sort had come up in the DPA, Deferred Prosecution Agreement or Consent Agreement, that implicated Airbus in that matter. So to help us do the discussion this morning, one is Mahama Ayariga, Honorable Member of Parliament for Oboku Central. We have the Alexander Aban, Honorable Esquire, former MP, Goma West, of course. Mahama Ayariga is also a lawyer. Daniel Yao Domelevo, former Auditor General, and also an anti-corruption crusader. And of course, Franklin Kujo, President Imani Africa. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Let me start off with you, Mahama Ayariga. It does appear that a lot of your members, persons in your party, are quite happy about the outcome of this particular investigation and the fact that the Office of the Special Prosecutor essentially closed the matter, given the observations it has made and the conclusions it has reached, which we'll delve into a bit later. But can you bring us up to speed on how this whole Airbus matter in relation to Ghana and government official one, who the report identifies as John Mahama, came about? Of course, it started when John Mahama was the Vice President of the Republic under the Mills administration. He got involved in some discussions around aircraft acquisition, etc. But let us understand how this happened to the point where we acquired the C-295 military transport aircraft.
Well, I mean, really this became an issue because in the US and also in the UK, there was some investigation of the business practices of Airbus. Apparently, Airbus, which is a multinational and has operations in the US, in Spain, and other jurisdictions, had a practice of engaging intermediaries and agents who basically served as lobbyists. They will go around and lobby for business for them and take a commission on the business. Because they manufacture aircrafts, they try to sell aircrafts. And so they will appoint people who would go and look for opportunity to sell aircrafts to countries, and they will be paid a commission. But then the UK and US authorities, that's the SFO, Serious Fraud Office of the UK, and the Department of Justice of the US, descended on Airbus and concluded that their practice of appointing agents and using those agents to look for business in a way involve, some corruption and bribery, utilizing these agents. And so they investigated. Then Airbus kind of, did not want to be taken through the hassle of prosecution. Not that if they had prosecuted them, they would have lost their cases. But being a multinational, sometimes you don't want them to take you through the rigor of prosecution, because you may end up being acquitted, but the prosecution could do so much damage to you. So businesses tend to just negotiate their way out and not go through the rigor. So they negotiated with SFO and Department of Justice, and then they entered into what these deferred prosecution agreements really are, which is that you don't prosecute me. I kind of accept that my practice was not the best, and then I pay you a fine So that was the arrangement. Now, it then turned out that they zeroed in on which countries they had, sold aircrafts to, and potentially had agents, and whether those agents were utilized to bribe public officers in those countries as part of the scheme to get the business. Ghana turned out to be one of those countries. There were several countries. Ghana turned out to be one of those countries.
The only African country.
Pardon?
The only African country.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
Ghana
true.
was the only African country. There were countries in Europe, countries in Asia, and etc. Ghana was the only African country. And so Ghana was then mentioned. And then in the documents released by the SFO, and also they started some proceedings in the UK and in the US, and both courts, who gave some kind of concurrence to the deferred prosecution agreements, mentioned variously some high-ranking official of the government of Ghana, and then a relative of his who they perceived to have acted on behalf of, the relative to have acted on behalf of Airbus. And then they believe that the relative potentially, used his influence over the high-ranking government official of Ghana to get the business to go through. In the end, 3 aircrafts were sold to Ghana, the C-295s, 3 of them, at different stages of the whole period, which started from 2012, and some of the aircrafts were delivered as late as 2015. So in all 3. Now, because of those 2 judgments in the US and then the UK courts, and because they mentioned the government of Ghana and they mentioned a high-ranking public officer and his relative, there was interest in Ghana. And then, even though nobody mentioned John Dramani Mahama, to tell you the truth, all of us knew that it was John Dramani Mahama. That's the fact. We've all been in this country.
That's revealing.
No, that's the fact. No, that's the fact, because when they said individual 1, and they all kept saying individual 1,
official,
high elected official, whose family member is an agent, and Foster's name had come up earlier on. This is the first time they are specifically mentioning John Dramani Mahama.
And I think Mahama in his book, My First Coup d'etat, also made reference to his brother,
Foster,
who was in the UK.
Yes. So everybody knew who Foster was, and knew that the only high-ranking official elected into office whose brother might be Foster is John Dramani Mahama. So this for me is not a revelation. We're just stating the obvious. We've all known that it is John Dramani Mahama. So because of that interest, of course, the new government under the NPP in 2020, is that it, 2020, referred the matter to the Office of Special Prosecution. People will say all sorts of things about the referral and say it is politically motivated and etc. But as a citizen of Ghana, as a lawyer, as somebody who, supports the campaign against, corruption and abuse of office and public graft, I honestly do not see anything wrong with referring the matter to the Office of Special Prosecutor for them to look into it. To tell you the truth, that's my personal opinion. It has nothing to do with my party and etc. Because there were 2 judgments in 2 different jurisdictions that had raised the issue. And then the parent company that was dealing with the matter, which is Airbus, had admitted to acts of corruption and bribery. Not necessarily that it affected us, but it had raised issues in our country. And so if we have an institution responsible for investigating and establishing acts of corruption, referring the matter to them to look into, in my opinion, is not an issue that we should be debating or trying to point accusing fingers at one another for. Now, what is important today is the fact that when the referral was done, they initiated the investigation, and they now revealed to us that individual 1 is John Dramani Mahama, something that we have all speculated already. So it doesn't come as a surprise. His brother, Samuel Adam Foster or Samuel Adam Mahama, is a person who worked with his partners to act as representatives of Airbus, not just in Ghana, but in several other countries also, that they were representing Airbus in several other countries. And OSP is saying that it is just by coincidence, for happenstance, that at the time that he's representing Airbus, his brother also happens to be the vice president of Ghana. And Ghana was in need of military aircrafts. And they had even gone sourcing for it from others, other manufacturers. But it turned out the prices were so high. And then Airbus offered lower prices that met the specs of the Ghanaian military. And he happened to be the person representing Airbus at that time in Africa, and therefore probably took advantage and then also pushed. And I think that for me, the real issue in these things is not corruption, it's not people actually giving bribery. It has more to do with having access. It has more to do with businesses having access. That's why sometimes you find all these big businesses looking for family members and friends and schoolmates and members of people that you belong to the same club and etc. It is more a question of having access to people in public office, not necessarily bribing those public officers. Because once you begin to have people who have access, then it means that your business proposal gets attention. Not necessarily because you have bribed a public officer, but because somebody who is an intermediary has access to that person. He uses that access to get more attention for you in terms of discussing your business, going through your business, and trying to get it to go through the various approval processes. So it is good that the OSP has gone through the investigation. It is good that they have concluded the matter. Naturally, we in the NDC will be happy because he is the flag bearer of our party. We are going into a crucial election in which corruption is one of the key issues in this electioneering campaign. We in the NDC have consistently accused Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's government, in which Bawumia was the vice president, of multiple scandals that we suspect were leading with corruption and etc. And we had this hanging over our head because there was also speculation out there about the Airbus scandal. On several occasions, MPP communicators, anytime they are discussing corruption of the MPP, they also point to Airbus as their example of a scandal under the NDC, in which they said John Dramani Mahama was also implicated. So to have the Office of Special Prosecutor come out at this very crucial stage in the campaigning to publicly state that John Dramani Mahama was not in any way involved in any act of corruption, I think that excites us. We are happy, we are satisfied, and it gives us some mileage in our campaign as we seek to point out that we run a relatively cleaner government, and if given the opportunity, we will do a better job at fighting corruption. So this is the background.
I see.
I mean, we can go into the details, but this is the background.
Sure. Honorable Aban, welcome to the program once again. So, so the president, through his secretary, executive secretary, made a referral. What was the intention of the referral, especially that the referral was made in an election year? Others have said many things, like Honorable Mahama alluded to. People thought it was political, etc. What was the essence of the president's referral of the matter to the Office of the Special Prosecutor? And the context really is that at the time, the office was occupied by Martin Amidu, who we knew had some issues with the Mahama administration, etc., etc. Wrote a lot in around those times before the NPP came to office, etc. So what really was the purpose of the referral?
Thank you very much. Good morning to my very good friend. It's been a while.
Yeah. We haven't seen each other for a while.
Yes. We're praying for peace in Jerusalem, peace in Baku.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. I would not want us to have any thinking that the referral as made in 2020 was for any political gains or was politically motivated to somehow come out with incriminating findings against government official one, whom by all the speculations that we had all made, pointed irresistibly to
one and only one man.
One and only one man, former President John Dramani Mahama. I believe that those of us with little learning, right, and with all the facts that had been established by the investigations conducted both in the UK and in the US, had no doubt in our minds that it was John Dramani Mahama who fitted very well the description of government official one. So I do not want us to think that it was politically motivated. After all, Ghana's name had been mentioned. The individuals whose identity had been found in those investigations had some way, somehow been redacted, if I should put it that way. Their names
Redacted.
Yes. And so there was some need to know who government official one was. So that investigation was set in motion, all to unravel the mystery surrounding this government official one. I think that from what we have heard from the special prosecutor, he went to the next level of looking at whether this government official one had either by circumstantial evidence or direct evidence been involved, so to speak, in the corrupt activities. Now, taking it from where my friend left off, he made it look quite simple that Airbus, in their practice of looking for potential customers for their aircraft, would appoint agents to somehow scout for business for them. I do not think that had always been the practice. And of course, if you have lobbyists who do that, they are established lobbyists who are known and who would have contracts with Airbus. Okay? And on the basis of those contracts, would set about going to persons who are likely or potential customers to have discussions with them so that they can enjoy the custom of, or they can patronize the products of Airbus. In the case of Foster, let us look at it very well. Information both in US and UK indicated that he had no knowledge whatsoever in this business.
Aircraft dealings.
And he had, yes, and he had never been appointed by Airbus in any previous deals. It was because of this fear that they had this time round get in some Spanish company which had some kind of existing relationship, so that the levels of suspicion that what they were doing smacked of corruption would tone down. We should not run away from that at all.
So is it a case
Let me
that
correct you. Facts,
yes.
very important.
But indeed, the
No,
report
very-
did say
very
that he had
important
no
facts.
knowledge of
No,
the aircraft.
stated that.
No.
Okay, you come with your
The Spanish
company.
which they use to substitute for
Foster.
Company D.
For Company D.
Is that okay?
That is
Yes.
Foster's company.
Company D,
Yes.
Foster's company, was not because they discovered that they had no previous deal with Airbus. It was because at that point they discovered that Foster was related to individual one. And so by their anti-corruption rules, Airbus realized that they will be held accountable as having engaged in a practice that violated the anti-corruption provisions of some European convention. If you recall, you read it carefully. So at that point, they decided no, they couldn't continue with the company. But then they realized that Foster and his team had done work for them in securing the business for them, and so they had an obligation to pay them. That was why they took the risk of trying to circumvent the arrangements under the European Convention and substitute the company with another. It wasn't because they said Foster had no previous experience.
So beyond,
but because they discovered at that stage that they were brothers, and they didn't want that to continue.
Yes, but the
fact,
fact also remains that at
say
the time of his engagement,
they knew.
he had no knowledge of the aviation sector. That is also pointed
That's also pointed out
in the report.
there.
No,
no
Foster also in his response established that he even had a what do they call it, a private pilot's license from South Africa. So the allegations that he had no knowledge of the aviation business is false. Read it. Read the statement. Foster says that he has a private pilot's license from South Africa. So anybody who says he has no knowledge of the aviation business is not representing the facts. It's in the statement. I've read it.
Yeah.
I've not been but I made a point to wake up midnight and read the whole report. So every part of the report I remember.
Very well.
So let's go.
Go ahead.
Beyond the legal threshold, which, of course, is always difficult to establish because you must do that beyond reasonable doubt. It is reasonable for fair-minded persons looking through this to know that they actually knew of Foster's connection, filial connection with John Mahama, which
in
they felt
in 2009,
which
before they
felt,
approached him.
yes, which they felt they could exploit to get to government official one.
But Mawayaga made mention of access. So is there anything wrong with knowing that you will have access to him?
Yes.
And so if I came to you, you would help me get access to him and get business. Is there anything wrong with that?
Good. I mean, we all do it. Oh, I know somebody who knows this person, so let me go to him so that he can talk to him, okay, for me to get my... But the point is that that's where we have to come as to when or what time previously had they ever engaged
Foster.
They got to him even before he floated his company, right? So this whole thing was actually in preparation for whatever monies that had to be paid, conduit and all that. But I'm saying that we may not be able to satisfy the legal threshold, but it would be very, very, very unthinkable for anybody to assume that whatever payments that would be made to Foster would just remain with Foster. Of course, your guess is as good as mine, but it may not necessarily, because after all, there's no direct evidence that Foster made onward payment to his brother, right? That is where law may fall short of truth.
Okay.
That's all that I would say. That's where law may fall short of truth. But you see, in the fight against corruption, if we use law alone, we would never get there. Because, you know, some of these things are done mostly behind closed doors. And so if it is...
So we should abandon the law and throw people, into jail
because
we don't believe we don't believe the law.
No.
Yeah,
Listen.
As a lawyer,
as a
lawyer, you see, people's reputations are involved. People's reputations are involved.
My brother, corruption. The law alone may not be enough.
I made a clear statement.
Because the law may not be the threshold in law.
I made a clear statement that the threshold of the law, using it...
What is the threshold of the law?
You would not reach...
No, what is the threshold of the law?
And that's why I was going to give an example. So just wait for me. Let me finish. Just wait for me. For instance, we've done some deal. Somebody is coming for a business, okay? from you. You have promised that, you know what, I get this business, 5% is yours. Okay? Which, in essence, is actually corruption, right? But you give that 5% to me, and probably I take it as cash to him. There will be no evidence linking you to him. You understand? It is corruption, all right. But the law would never be able to catch up on him.
Because the law will not be able to make the connection.
Would not be able to make the connection. Okay? So I'm saying that law alone, and I'm not saying that we should just use speculations and all that to besmear people. No. But in the fight against corruption, and here I'm not speaking because it is Airbus. You know me. If it is here, I'll hit it. If it is here, I'll hit it. But we always talk about it. In fact, every election that we have had in Ghana since 1992, corruption is actually on the ballot every year, every 4 years, right? So at what time and what are we going to do differently so that corruption will cease to be on the ballot? Because every year, every 4 years, if they want to kick you out, one of the biggest campaigns will be that you are corrupt. You are corrupt. The government is corrupt. And indeed, every 4 years, we have series of scandals, whether it's NPP that is in government, whether it's NDC that is in government. So my friend should understand me from that background. Okay? It is not because it is Airbus. But surprisingly, he said they are elated. They are excited because it has now come out that government official one did not have any direct, or if I should use the words of the special prosecutor, he used both circumstantial and direct. So meaning that he's completely insulated, if I should put it that way, right? But why should it take us all this long time before we get to know the identity of government official one? Because at that time, people who knew government official one and government official one himself, right, knowing the facts that have been churned out in the investigations in the UK and the US, wanted to even distance himself from who government official one was, right? It is only the investigation of OSP, which seems to be saying that he is not involved in any corrupt dealings. Meanwhile, if you read the reports of and the judgments of the UK court and US court, nobody will be put in doubt that there was some corrupt dealings and that it went as far as to government official one. Right? But for me, let's go beyond that. You see that year in, year out, corruption in high places, whether MPP or whether NDC, right? Procurement breaches here and there. When are we going to stop that? That is my beef as a Ghanaian, right? Because it appears to me that even the youth who are clamoring to go into politics under the pretext of going to serve have realized that it's the quickest way of being rich and being influential. A lot of things were said about scholarship, a lot of things were said about other places and all that. So it appears that you get into politics and everybody thinks that you must be rich instantly. And that quick change in your life, okay, is actually conditioned by some corrupt dealings. Look, you are a lawyer. Our colleagues, they meet me in court and say, now what are you doing? I say, I've just come back. I'm doing practice. I say, but is it can be? Then you ask, what money? When you went to government, didn't you get anything? And somebody said, you should be very rich. Why? You were in Ministry of Health.
And Communications.
This is personal.
Colleagues, friends.
Yes, friends. You were in Ministry of Health, one of the biggest ministries, where
Ministry of
a lot of a lot of procurements, blah blah blah. And then you left there. You were in Ministry of Communications. You should be very rich. And I say on set, right? If they use the biggest and the sharpest microscope to look into my activities as a government official, they will not get me having taken one city. So when I'm speaking about corruption, I'm very passionate about it. If we were all going to do things right, we would not be getting ourselves here.
Very well. Let me, you guys are here. So let me deal with Daniel Domelevo, former Auditor General of Ghana and an anti-corruption crusader.
He's my friend,
yes,
and he knows me. He knows why I'm speaking this way.
I see. That's good. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the program. We're happy that you've been able to join us this morning. I'm sure you have perused the document or the report from the Office of the Special Prosecutor. What are your initial thoughts on the outcome or the outcome of the investigations?
Thank you very much and good morning. Let me say good morning to my two friends.
You may want to unmute. Okay, good. So we can hear you now, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, very well now.
Great. Greetings to the two honorable people in the studio. It's been a long time, so they're happy to see them. Let me say that I took time to read the report, which was brought out by the special prosecutor at the end of his investigation. And as for me, I was full of commendations for him because especially when a request comes from the office of the president, public servants are likely to read in between the line in order to toe the line of the president or what they think the president wants or wanted. But I think he independently did his assessment or his investigation and came out with his report. Some aspects of the report, I think, did not sit well with Ghanaians. Some of the Ghanaians are very happy with the report. But be it as it may, my happiness is that he has done his work independently and boldly come out with his findings. I've been listening to the discussion in the studio, and it is very interesting. The two of them are lawyers, and I think the two of them will agree that in these cases, two things are important. It's a matter of law and a matter of facts.
Exactly.
According to the OSP, he didn't find to support the facts. And if he didn't find the evidence to support the fact, then I don't think we can fault him. But then the question I would like to throw back to them, for them to educate us, the public, is, does that bring finality to the case? If it does not bring finality, then why are they crying foul? Because if the issue can still be taken out to another contest where we think the truth may come out, they should take it. But I think that the OSP has done a good job, and let's respect the position of the law. In the performance of his duty, he is not under the direction and control of anybody. Now people are telling him he should have done this, he should have done that. I don't think that is right. So if someone has done his professional work, let's applaud him for that. If you are not happy with the output, I think there are opportunities we can explore. Thank you.
Very well. So the issue about familial relationships and all of that have come up. Of course, Honorable Mahama Yarega has talked about access. For you as an anti-corruption person, we know that business people always want access. And if I know you, there's no reason why I shouldn't take advantage of my knowing you to get somewhere. You know, where do we draw the line in this fight against corruption? Because the whole thing appears to be around the fact that Foster, because Foster was related to government official one, now John Mahama, he was able, allegedly, to get things through to the point of getting Ghana to purchase the aircraft, even though the report also says that the purchase of the aircraft was arrived at after professional, should I say investigation or professional procedure. Of course, they had wanted the US to supply it. They couldn't meet the timeline, the cost, etc. Airbus came in and their terms were better, so they went for it. When you look at all of that, against the fact that it was his brother who was involved, where will you say that the line should have been drawn? And generally, where do we draw the lines in terms of access and familiar relations?
Let me say that familiar relationships, what I refer to as conflict of interest, is very disturbing and fuels corruption and corruption-related activities.
Exactly.
The bar in Ghana is extremely low. People don't see anything wrong being public officers appointing their brothers, their cousins, their wives, their in-laws, etc., to public positions and giving government contracts to them. But to me, that is a no. If you would like to go according to the UN standard, the World Bank where I worked, once I am employed in the World Bank, none of my cousins, nephews, etc., will be employed again by the World Bank. It is as simple as that. But in Ghana, you go into a public office and you see the chief executive has a brother or a cousin as a secretary. At times, a wife is even operating. I remember there was once a board where the board members had about 3 or 4 children in the institution and a whole lot of things. So, to be honest with you, the bar in Ghana is extremely low. But what has caused this? When I came to office in 2017, I think getting to the end of 2017 or early 2018, I remember Honorable Gloria Akufu sent me a bill which is entitled Conduct of Public Office Holders. In that bill, there are issues to do with conflict of interest, asset declaration, accepting of gift, bribe. All those issues have been addressed in that bill. Up to today, that bill is lying, I don't know, on the floor or on the carpet or in the drawer or on the shelves of the office of the president. I remember about somewhere last year, Occupy Ghana even wrote requesting for the status. They actually shared a copy of their letter with me. And the response came that they were waiting for some update from the Ministry of Finance in regard to the... Up to today, we don't have it. So the question I would like to ask is who caused them? And I believe why that bill is not going through is because the people who are supposed to facilitate that bill knows that they are the highest or the biggest corporate. They have been involved in several issues of conflict of interest, family and friend business, etc., which that bill is aimed at addressing. So, like Honorable Aban said, there is the need for us to strengthen our legal system so that we can eschew that. Otherwise, we can only complain, like the OSP complained about the relationship between the two of them. I don't know if there is any other law that you can depend upon. I also normally draw attention to Article 284 of the Constitution, which requires that public officers don't put themselves in a position where their personal interests will conflict with the doing of their work. But that whole chapter, including 286, which is on assets and liabilities declaration, we are told by 287 that can be addressed by reporting to the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, CHRAJ. So far, CHRAJ says there is no law defining what punishment should be given or should not be given. So when people have even not declared their assets, Chief Justice Ani Yabua and co, who had not declared their assets when they assumed office, they were only told that, well, better late than never, so declare it. So if we are people serious with ensuring that public officers do the right thing, that conduct of public office holders bill must be passed. I hear there is a new bill which is prohibiting buying of assets from the public officers and their relatives. All that should have been incorporated into this conduct bill so that we have a comprehensive bill to regulate public offices. Thank you.
Yes, so on the issue about Foster and government official one and conflict of interest. So here is a case where Ghana wanted an aircraft. The one from the US could not be delivered on time and at cost. Airbus comes up. Fortunately or unfortunately, there's somebody there who happens to be a relation to government official one, and that was going to be given to us at a cheaper cost. Ghana was going to save money. Do we say that because of 284 conflict of interest considerations, etc., we should maybe not touch the Airbus offering and go for a more expensive one because of fears of conflict of interest and Article 284? How do we maneuver that?
Yeah, if it were Daniel Domilevo who was in charge and get to know that there is a cheaper option, I will have directed the person directly to the people who are handling the case. I will not get myself involved in it at all.
No, but in this case, he was the chairman of the Armed Forces board, the Armed Forces Council, and he was a vice president. I'm sure he had direct responsibility for that. So you would have advised that because of his familial relations, he would take himself out of that. Is that the case you're saying? Is the point you're making?
Yeah, that is what I was going to say. That in international rules or guidelines that we have been applying, for instance, in the World Bank, in such cases you recuse yourself. It's not as if the chairman is not there, the committee or the commission or whatever or the council cannot work. You can recuse yourself. I'm conflicted here, so I'm not going to be part of this. That shows that yes, you have realized there's a potential conflict of interest. But the interesting part of this is when I raised this issue, I remember in office, Ghana, I was even told that once the chairman recuses him or herself, it automatically you have to give the contract to his brother or sister. Otherwise, you have not been fair.
I mean, exactly my point, because if I recuse myself and maybe Alex is the man to take charge, I'll tell him, Alex, you know, I'm recusing myself because I have an interest in this. So you work on this, we'll talk after. You know, and so exactly. you end up fulfilling the dictates of the book, but in substance, nothing really has happened.
Thank you.
And that is a reality.
Yes.
Not only the law.
So the point I'm trying to make is that we have not seen that conflict of interest as very key in producing or coming out with corruption-related activities. We don't see how serious it is. In many jurisdictions, because of that relationship, he will have nothing to do with it, or they may have to get a separate subcommittee set up to handle the whole case and just report their findings to the commission or the council that he is the chairman of, so to insulate him from the whole transaction. But this is what I'm saying, that now it depends upon individual judgment. All these things must be laid down in public administration because it's something we come across every day. Are we all not aware of the number of relatives of president, ministers, etc., that have been put into places who are doing business with government? Are we not aware? We can't play the ostrich. We are aware that government officials, including the president and vice presidents, are awarding contracts to their relatives. So if we don't want it, let's come out with a law and prohibit it. Otherwise, we suffer it together.
I see. You hang in there. I'll come back to you for the lessons and what we need to do moving forward. But Honorable Agari had some points to make, right? You wanted to make some interventions when Domelevo was speaking.
I missed that. But I think that the key issue here is that the special prosecutor was anchoring all that investigation in relation to the criminal laws of Ghana, which basically deal with the issues of burden of proof and standard of proof.
Yes.
Proof beyond reasonable doubt. That basically is what he is doing. And so if the president's brother leads a company to come and then try to push a transaction, how do you prove that the president has taken bribe from these people? Secondly, is it the case that the president's brother even revealed the nature of the transaction and the relationship that he has with Airbus? He may not have revealed to him, or if I get the business, this is how much they are paying me. You get the point? He runs his company and he represents them across Africa and he looks for business for them across Africa. Whatever the relationship is between he and them is a matter between he and them, not the president. But then also, like everybody has said, those of us in public office must be mindful of the constitutional provisions relating to conflict of interest and understand it properly. And in areas where there's the potential of that conflict, we should be careful. And I think that the Office of Special Prosecutor has done a good job because he actually points that out as well. It's not as if he glosses over that. He does mention the fact that individual government official one, John Dramani Mahama, should have known that precisely because of his relationship with Foster, no matter how clean the transaction is, no matter how beneficial the pricing and delivery date and everything is to the Republic of Ghana, simply because his brother is involved in the transaction, that it will raise eyebrows. He doesn't gloss over that. He actually does mention that. And definitely that is a lesson that I pick from the report. And I think that is a very legitimate, matter. But the issue of how you deal with a situation like that is what the Spanish outfit of Airbus tried to do. They recognized that they did a good job for them, they got the business and etc. But then they realized that once it is the president's brother, if they dealt with them, they one day will be faced with an issue of conflict of interest and potential charges of influencing a government official, using the relative of the government official. That's how come they thought that they should substitute the company with a different company. So those issues have come up. It's not as if they are buried. They have come up, and they are part of the things that as a country we should be discussing. And I do agree with.
We don't know whether government official John Mahama disclosed to the people around the transaction that Foster was his brother, or that was to be taken for granted because a lot of people, maybe like yourselves, knew that he was related to him. Did he disclose that? Do we know? Or it was something we were to take for granted?
No. Even the Spanish company got to know that was his brother. And then they applied the brakes. Is that okay? In part of the transaction. So I believe that a lot of people were involved, and the high-ranking military officials were involved. Because in the report you will see instances where there were meetings in London at which the Airbus company made representations, and then government officials who took part in the meetings, the finance ministry, Ghana Armed Forces, I believe the Air Force, they reviewed the documents, the proposals, and then the quality of the aircrafts that they were buying, and then took decisions to advise government to go ahead with the transaction. I believe that somehow they would have known. But like I said, it is not what the UK courts say or what the US courts say. It is what our laws say about what act constitutes corruption. Is that okay? And when we should hang you, And so if our laws don't say we should hang you, if our laws don't say that that is corruption, I think that the fact that Airbus and the people there have gone to sign some deferred prosecution agreements in which they admit that they had a practice in which they corrupted officials in order to get business. Yeah, but doesn't mean that our specific officials were actually corrupted.
I get the point. Of course, OSP even said they couldn't make any connection. But just to press further on this, so the requirement is that you disclose and then you recuse yourself. So like Domelevo was saying, you should recuse yourself and let the transaction continue. You could be in the background, but of course that we don't know. But it doesn't appear that government official one disclosed, because we don't know that, but essentially he did not recuse himself from the transaction. He kept the communication with Foster. And I'm sure that is what is created a lot of the issues. If he had
let me talk about the law on
conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest, so far as I recall it. In Parliament, and he knows this, the Constitution is clear that when there is an agreement, a transaction, before Parliament, in which a member of Parliament has an interest, that's the member of Parliament has an interest in the transaction, you are to recuse yourself.
No, you must first disclose.
Yeah, disclose and recuse yourself. But if you don't disclose, how will you recuse yourself?
Anyway.
You disclose and then you recuse yourself from participating in taking the decision. I get the point. Not the debate, in voting. You can argue and explain, because we are looking for the truth to understand the transaction. So maybe because you are involved, you understand it better than anybody.
So you could take part
So
in the
you could
debate.
take part in the debate, but when it comes to voting on the
Decision
matter,
making.
you are supposed to recuse
yourself.
yourself. Okay? The other provisions in the Constitution says that you as a member of government operating under the Constitution should not put yourself in a position where your personal interest conflicts
Or
with your-
is likely to
or is
conflict.
likely to conflict with your public responsibility. Do you understand the situation? This is the context in which we operate and the law operates. But the constitutional provisions, do not actually even specify,
They are broad.
specific punishment for not doing so. Are you getting the point? Except that maybe it's a violation of the Constitution, and then the court will declare
makes
that
it
you
like
have
a
violated
moral
the
wrong,
Constitution.
sort of.
Exactly, things like that. That's basically, and that's why they're saying that we should zero in on these issues and pass specific legislation,
That's okay.
spelling them out in detail. Like in the U.S., you give this spectacle case or whatever it is to a public official.
They would have to disclose it.
They will disclose it depending on the value. If it's just $10, they're allowed to just keep it. If it exceeds $100, they have to go and record.
They have
that.
what you call the Foreign
So,
Corrupt
yes,
Practices Act.
so they have all these details set out. If you invite them to, a vacation, all those matters, they have to determine whether, if you have a beach house and you invite him to your beach house, all those are monitored closely so that public officers know where the line is that you never cross. Now, we talked about using lobbyists. In the US, they have legislation on lobbying. They have specific legislation on lobbying. Who can be a lobbyist? They are registered and they are known. And where lobbying conflicts, where you cross the line and it's not just lobbying, but then you are abusing your office and your relationship with institutions. All those are clearly spelled out. And that is what
that's what we need to be
that's what
getting
we should
to.
be
But
working
there appears
on.
to be something
and these kind of
dragging,
incidents and the outcome of the work should lead us to begin to think about specific concrete legislation. As I said, that bill has been there for a long time. I remember spotting the bill and discussing the bill in my days in civil society. But interest.
Your days in civil society.
Yeah,
But
interest.
that's been a long time ago.
Yeah, interest. People just have interest. And once people in power see that a legislation doesn't serve their interest, they will scuttle it. So civil society has to push as hard as possible.
Great. So I have Franklin on the line, but Franklin, I'll come to you in just a minute. Let me hear from Honorable Aban. Yes.
You see,
so,
in the long run, he spoke my language. When I said that law alone may not be the fighter against corruption. Because you see, if I have the motivation to do it, my next line of action is, how do I outwit the law?
The law.
And so in going into public office, beyond the competencies that we go and exhibit, we must also have the mindset and the heart of doing right to the people, where we put their interest ahead of ours.
But that
So long
interest
as-
of the people ahead of ours, appears to be waning at a very fast rate.
Yes, and so we must
And
start-
that's a
we must-
moral issue.
It's a moral issue.
And it's a conscience matter. And
Exactly.
you cannot legislate that.
You cannot legislate
So
that.
and it's waning. How do we build back that?
But how does society itself help in fighting it? Society is not doing that. And every time, I come back to the practice and the process by which we get our leaders. That whole process, from polling station till a flag bearer is elected, that whole process is steeped in corruption. Why do you think that we will start a process of corrupt practices and reap honest people? The time must come where Ghanaians will tell people that, look, enough of your dirty money. We want to listen to what something good you want to come and do for us. What heart, what motivation you have to come and serve us. But if I'm going to give you money before I can get to serve you, why do you think that I will not get my money back? And so that whole system, if we don't deal with it, we would never be able to even scratch corruption,
I see.
let alone approach it.
I see. Great. Franklin, welcome to the program. So, civil society, your good friend Kise Jabin came up with this. It's been something we've been waiting for, and many people thought that we were going to cross this election with it. Here he came with this. People like Domalevu, etc., think that he is done well, he's been bold to come up with this report at this time in our history. What do you think, Franklin?
Oh, so same here. Good morning to everyone. Good to see Aban. Well, look, it's one of the thorough reports I've actually ever heard. I've not read it, but I listened to the entire. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, yeah.
I listened to the entire Facebook Live program where he virtually was reading out the report. And at the point, I was asking myself, I said, what did I just hear? You know, so I kept going back and back and back again. And I realized that this was a thoroughly well-written, I feel like, well done report. I mean, I doff my heart out to him. To think that against all the should I say, the challenges he probably had, even with the Western nation, all of that, he managed to speak to the people involved. And that's crucial. I mean, if you accuse people of engaging in certain crimes, just shouting out their names out there that, oh, they are FC number 1, FC football, FC 7, FC 4, it doesn't cut it. It doesn't wash. I mean, you need to go have audience with these people. And for me, that singular act, which he did, given all the evidence that with Marshall, and then went ahead and spoke with certain characters. I think for me that did it for me, and I was thoroughly happy. You know, at the end of the day, I think this is obviously it's a political matter. You know, the president himself had, without number, he himself had cause to mention John Mahama as the government official one. Which is something I suspect that we also need to let the NDC and John Mahama know that initially he said he was not the one. I mean, basically they were angry when they were being referred to as Government Officer One. Now, Government Officer One is descriptive and he is the one. And then and I think that you accept that in good faith as well. I mean, when you make this argument, people say, and so what? Because at the end of the day, he was also acquitted anyway. Well, the fact of the matter is that initially when it happened, I can understand, given all the negativity around the transaction. I mean, it's probably annoying to be referred to as government official as we did that some point. But look, as the former Auditor General said, I think was it Aban rather? Aban. We need to go beyond these little, should I call them, one-time sort of cases, deal with the root causes of all this problem. You know, I ask myself, well, the amount involved may be huge, but I've looked at the procurement contracts, over 1,000 of them that we analyze. I think I'm mentioning this every now and then, and almost 90% of those contracts they didn't pass the very public financial management rules we set for ourselves. So the question is, are we moving forward or are we going backwards? And it looks to me, the conversation about grant theft, I don't call it corruption, it's grant theft, but which has debilitating impact on the economy and livelihoods of people. Unfortunately, I don't think we solved that matter at all. I mean, I'm looking at the Ministry of Special Development Initiative. That single ministry alone is one of the reasons why we are in this mess as an economy. It was just allowed to do anything they want, procure, dugouts, costing 15,000. They build the country 230,000 Ghana cedis. I mean, open theft, grant theft, you know, and then you ask yourself, those billions of cedis and dollars that went into that so-called IPEP or whatever program, just was washed away by grant theft. And so I wonder where we should be worried that yes, the former president was involved. And I agree. Look, I agree with Honorable. I don't think the moment President Mahama received that notification, the moment he was copied on that email, the moment that call came through, he should have just said, "Look, Bao, deal with the appropriate quarters, because that's what you actually have to do as a public interest person. But maybe he wanted to see around the emails were coming. He also wanted to know what is happening. But the moment you do that, you open yourself to all kinds of problems. And I think somehow he probably would have learned his lessons of that. But as far as this thing goes, I was wondering at the point whether corruption had actually defeated him, because clearly speaking, the deluge of corruption cases in this country right now under this administration can bury you. In fact, it can bury you 6 feet. But
I see, great.
so at the point, I was wondering whether my good friend had been probably been buried, and probably, I don't know, maybe we would have met on the last day of the judgment day. But in any case, he's still alive. And the good thing is that he's come back and he's come with this report. Look, some MP people are very angry. I spoke to a few friends of mine yesterday, ministers and so. Someone said, look, what Kishe Jaben has actually exposed President Mahama the more, because now he's government official one. Now, because that was how this whole thing began, right? So that's why I asked a question late last night. And this chewing me on my Facebook wall. I said, is then this saying, John, do they now accept the characterization that they are government official one? Of course, I was being mischievous, but I'm also making the point. When it came first, they said, power away, stop calling me government official one. Now, government official one has been described, you accept it, because there's a proviso that goes along it that says you didn't really commit anything. Anyway.
Great.
Thank
Great.
you.
Yes. So let me take the final word from former Auditor General Domelevo. Your final words on what lessons should we learn and how do we proceed in a few minutes here?
Thank you very much, and I agree so much with Franklin Kujo on his submission. The lessons we should learn from this is that we are put in public office to discharge or prosecute the agenda of the country, not our family and friends' agenda. And for me as an accountant, it is said that the accountant must not only be independent, but must be seen as independent. That is why you are not allowed to audit the firm of your wife, your brother, or your relatives, etc., because nobody will take you seriously. Public officers must learn to separate themselves from their family and relatives when it comes to government business. People tend to promote this notion of and whatnot, etc., which I think are corrupt ideas. If we are going to play the football, then we must obey the rules of the game. Public service is not limited to Ghana. It is done in over 160 or whatever countries all across the world. We must go by the rules. There are bills or laws that, if they had come out, would have helped us address some of these issues better. Like I talked about the Conduct of Public Officers Bill 2018, which is still lying in the presidency. We may have to expedite action and pass it into law and start practicing it so that people will know that these type of things are not good. Let me give you just an example. Don't you find it disturbing, in my case, as an Auditor General, I charge a senior minister, Honorable Osafo Mafu. I go to court and Honorable Osafo Mafu was not there. Who was there? Professor Duajimai, the board chairman of Audit Service. He is on the other side against me because he is staff of senior minister. And he doesn't find anything wrong with it. So we need to stop this type of misbehaviors and go by the rules of the game. Thank you.
Very well, great. I see. A few of your messages quickly before I take a break and switch to the next. Before I switch to the next subject, Chris in Ashaliboche says, "Salam, it gladdened my heart to hear in the news that the King of Infrastructure, John Mahama, is as clean as virgin snow and as holy as the garment of Jesus Christ." You see, Honorable Ramadan, who is the MP for Adenta, celebrated the good news of his boss this week. Did I hear the lawyer say in the studio say, there are two lawyers, I'm sure you're referring to Lawyer Aban, say that the law would not really unravel the truth? So what does he want us to do? Anyway, you say a fowl will never get fair justice at a court presided over by a grain folks in NPP can continue to bleed. You see, that's Chris from Ashale Butwe. Abdul Ganiu says, how could he not own up then to say he was government official one, but not tainted in the case? I see. This one from Emil says, are we ever going to have any government without scandals? The corruption is so endemic. Even a hung parliament couldn't cure the canker. A lot to say about the hung parliament and the expectation people had before the swearing in of that parliament. Yeah. The jury is still out there whether the parliament as it is delivering or not. But I mean, to be fair, a few things have been achieved here and there. I'm sure we can have that discussion. But the fact is that a lot of people think that this parliament has failed the country, given the prospects we thought it was going to offer. Anyway, this is the big issue.
Worked much more
this is the big issue. 97.3 City FM and also on Channel One television. My name is Solomon. We take a short break. When we return, we'll do the founder before the S, apostrophe before S, or founder apostrophe after the S. Where do we draw the line? How do we resolve this? Is there a necessary debate to have at all? We'll be right back with that.